We are looking at a 5,000 share order.
everyone, and welcome back. I am Stephanie Wong, and we are officially kicking off day 2 live here at Google Cloud Next. Now, if you were hanging out with us on the stream yesterday, welcome back to the broadcast. And if you are just logging in for the first time today, then you picked the perfect time to join. So I'm going to be honest, yesterday was an absolute whirlwind. The energy here in the broadcast booth and out on the show floor was really incredible, and the announcements just kept coming. Day 1 is always about that big picture vision, and it did deliver. And we had some truly unforgettable moments on this desk. We sat down with Ben and David from the Acquired podcast for an amazing conversation about the business of tech. And then we went super deep into the weeds on the new agent CLI with Shubham, which I know lit up the live chat here. And then we explored the mind-bending future of Gen Media with Katie and Kulan. So before we move forward, I do want to hear from you all. So open up the live chat right now. Let me know, what was your favorite announcement or session from day 1? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Our moderators are actually watching, and I'll be giving some shout outs later in the show. So all of that was just a warm up, because while yesterday was about the broad vision, day 2 is all about the builders. We are fresh off of an incredible developer keynote, and the rest of today is dedicated entirely to you, the developer community. Today is where we transition from the high-level slides to the hands-on keyboards. We're talking less about the what and diving headfirst into the how. How do you actually build this stuff? How do you integrate these new AI models? And how do you ship faster and more securely? So we're going to unpack all of the biggest tech announcements that directly impact your daily workflows. We have an unbelievable lineup of special guests, engineers, and tech leaders coming along your way today. We are not wasting any time. We're actually starting off with a massive one. So when you talk about empowering developers and the future of AI-assisted coding, this next guest is at the absolute forefront of the industry. He is helping redefine how developers build, collaborate, and ship software. So please welcome to the desk the president and head of AI at Whelpley, Michele Catasta. Michele, it's so great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me. Hi, Stephanie.
Yeah, how has Next been for you?
It's been crazy. It's my first time here in Vegas doing the large version of Next. The last time I saw it at the Moscone. Amazing scale, a lot of energy. I love it.
Yeah, Moscone was a very different scale. I started back in 2017, and it was probably, maybe like 1/3 of the size it is today.
I figured, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
So a lot of stuff happening. I'm just so excited to talk about Whelpley because you've grown so much incredibly in the last several years. So just kind of talking about developer velocity. At Google Cloud, we're obsessed with this concept of developer velocity. Whelpley is fundamentally redefining what a developer is, who a developer is. So as your agents become more autonomous and leverage models like Gemini, for example, to handle some of the complex logic here, how do you see the day-to-day role of a developer changing? And what does the future look like for software creators?
It's been incredible to see what happened in the last 6 months already. I would say the day-to-day for developers has already changed. I expect it to be completely disrupted even more in the next year or so. Fundamentally, we're all becoming managers of agents. So a lot of the code is being written by AI. I think even Sundar yesterday on stage was mentioning that. What's going to happen though is that we are going to boost the productivity of both developers and knowledge workers just by means of allowing them to manage a lot of agents in parallel, and they will just express in natural language what they want, and there will be like a swarm of agents getting the job done for them. That's how the future is going to look like.
Do you feel like the tools that developers use is going to change fundamentally? Like, how do you feel like the experience of software development or IDEs will eventually change?
Well, our bet at Whelpley since we launched the first version of the agent was to take a complete departure from IDEs. Not because they're not still useful today for developers. I do think they still play a role in the niche, but for the vast majority of software creators, people that don't come from a strong software engineering background, IDEs are not only not needed anymore, but I would argue that it's not the right product surface for them. You want to interact with an agent, you want to get feedback from it, you don't want to stare at the code. And that's why we call this space vibe coding. You just vibe with the AI product, you don't look at the code itself.
Yeah, and I also feel that the term developer has always been a bit vague, right? It's very all-encompassing, but there's so many different colors and versions of builders today, and that color schema is coming out to fruition now more than ever.
Agree.
Like, I consider myself really like a certain type of builder who appreciates that kind of surface as well. And you have also, you started as more of a core engineer and have really transitioned, and you've seen this space change. So how do you use your own tools specifically at Replit?
We dog food our product a lot, partially because I moved my first steps in the industry at Google, so already back in the days the dog fooding concept was very important, and I remind my company every single day we have to be the top user of Replit. And it turns out that maybe a year and a half ago, when we launched the first version of Replit Agent, it wasn't as powerful as needed to create useful internal tools. Right now is absolutely the case. I would say maybe more than 50% of the time I spend in front of my screen at the office is on tools that we built on Replit. I split my time between Gmail, internal communications on Slack, and everything else is built on Replit. All the enterprise customers that use us, fundamentally they find Replit disruptive exactly for the same reason. They don't go out anymore and buy a random SaaS solution from vendors. They build the tools that they need with Replit.
Yeah, nice. And no better way to dog food your own software, right? Okay, so just talking about the model layer, I know that we're constantly pushing the boundaries with Gemini, especially with things like the massive context window, the advanced reasoning. So since your team at Replit is building at the absolute bleeding edge of this area, what excites you the most about the future of models like Gemini? And what is that holy grail capability that you want from us to be able to really unlock the next massive leap for Replit's agents?
There have been two capabilities on which Gemini has been exceptional since the very beginning. And I would say they are multimodality. The fact that no matter what is the type of input you're passing to the model, images, videos, and the fact that it has a very large context means that it can understand whatever you throw at the model. And that's very important for a product like Replit Agent because our users are passing the raw ingredients to the agent, and then they expect it to be very smart and read their mind almost and understand that on a certain frame of the video they should take a picture of the person and then place it on their website. So Gemini has been incredible Swiss Army knife for us to use in product, as well as the design capabilities. We power our agentic canvas on Replit, where you can basically wipe code design directly from the Gemini models. So I would love to see these two capabilities becoming even better over time. And you give me glimpses of where things are going, so we're very excited to keep using it in the future. I would say the holy grail is to really Gemini becoming a model that is also extremely powerful in any agentic workflow. Of course, it's very hard, and by definition, every research lab is putting their chips on different capabilities. But I know that you folks have everything it takes to really be extremely competitive also in the space.
Yeah, we had some really great conversations yesterday just around the model capabilities becoming so advanced now that it's really unlocking the agentic era. Being able to do things like the design capabilities, but understanding contextual knowledge across the entire code base. And I think with the launch of Gemini 3, it's become even more apparent that it can really boost that.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, well, talking about just product roadmap and building the future a little bit more, I know that you just had the launch of the Replit agent, and that really shifted the paradigm of how people build software from scratch. So without giving away all of your secrets here, what does the product roadmap look like over the next 12 to 18 months over at Replit? And how does having this deeply integrated cloud and AI partnership help you with that?
I wish I could tell you my 18 months product roadmap, not even because I don't want to disclose it, but rather because the advances in frontier models that you guys are spearheading are putting us in a place where a product roadmap maybe 3 months away from now is already quite ambitious. That being said, there is one thing that we know for sure, and that we're already putting a lot of engineering effort internally, which is the fact that our Agent 4 that we launched back in March is already very capable, not only as an app builder, but in general as a general agent that creates a lot of different types of software artifacts. Now, the next step that is very natural, especially given our partnership with Google Cloud, is giving access to our agent to pretty much any product that Google Cloud offers. And that will basically turn any user of Replit into a very advanced software engineer. Today, we already provide auth as a native layer. We provide, database access directly in GCP. So all the main building blocks that you would expect, they are there, and they're already enterprise quality. I want to expand the aperture of what Replit Agent can do, and really allow you to use any single product on Google Cloud without our users even knowing that that's happening. So we would see an explosion in terms of complexity of what a rapid user can build in our product without them knowing that it's happening, which is the best case scenario.
Yeah, exactly. I think just the fact that you don't have to be an expert in everything from database management to setting up your first function or serverless technology or all of the infrastructure. Maybe you're not even familiar with the Kubernetes cluster, but you know the value.
Yeah, you shouldn't
of it.
be. Exactly.
So I think it's really exciting just really like the intersection between the two of having AI agents kind of complete those tasks and have access to all of the fundamental documentation and instructions, and even you mentioned auth too, and just taking care of that.
Yeah, auth is so important because it's the foundational element for security. So we want to make sure that everything that is high stakes is handled by us, in a very opinionated way, but we steer you towards the best practices of the industry. We steer you towards what Google Cloud offers, and in exchange you get the same level of enterprise security that a very expert software engineer has.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that is embedded into Google Cloud as well. So the two together. Okay, so in this whole AI space today, the half-life of new technology is really, really shortening, right? We know that Replit is known for really shipping at scale and speed. Y'all are very agile. So take us behind the scenes of how you're able to do this. What is your engineering culture like? And how do you balance that with reliability that we all need? And how does building on Google Cloud infrastructure give your team that agility to deploy?
I would say, first of all, is not thinking anymore of deadlines and projects in matters of like quarters or sometimes even doing yearly plans. We know that they don't work any longer. So I love to have a lot of projects internally happening with timelines that span a few weeks. And we keep asking ourselves, how can we do this faster? And that also forces us, to use more tools to make different architectural decisions that allow us to just be more productive overall. It goes without saying that embracing coding agents across the entire company, of course, has made a huge difference, especially in the last 6 months. That being said, I think there's almost like a natural tension when it comes to a company that has both a platform aspect, because Rapid goes all the way from orchestrating hardware to creating our own agent harness to owning the product surface. So everything works in I would say, totally different way. So like the AI team, for instance, I like to call it sort of the innovation engine of the company. Very scrappy, it works with a very fast iteration speed, and we create a lot of prototypes of what we believe could be good product features. Not all of them see the light of the day. And then there are teams that work on a different timeline, especially when they're closer to Google Cloud or closer to the hardware. Those projects take longer. Migrations, of course, have to be done much more carefully because they entail user data and the user accounts and so forth. So there is this tension where some teams are running faster, some others use like more engineering practices that really focus on reliability. And we kind of average the pace and we make sure that everyone meets a certain point, and then we ship the new version of the product. I think I see a lot of other startups also in our space moving, in a similar way. And as you know, tension is very productive in life. It creates disagreement, but it also allows you to find the best solution.
Yeah, it's true. It's right at the intersection that you really find the most innovative solutions. And I do agree. I think there is a certain tension in typical like enterprise or company environments where it's really focused on persistence. Mm-hmm. So persistence meaning it's rigid, it's designed for reliability, and as you mentioned, you need that. But there's also this pressure to become more about plasticity, meaning you need flexibility, you need to fail fast. So instead of embracing a culture of failure just being about a postmortem and debugging, you also need to embrace failure as more of a filter to understand the ideas that actually you should spend more time on and move that earlier in the process of ideation.
Yeah, there are failures that are unacceptable. You can fail when it comes to user data, you can fail when it comes to security, regardless of being an enterprise customer or any of even our free users. We care about security across the board and we put a lot of effort on that. Some of those engineering efforts are very careful and thoughtful. But when it comes to innovation, that's the fun part. And agents, really did a 10x on the speed of innovation as well, of what we can prototype internally. So, there we embrace the messiness and we just go as fast as it gets.
And as I understand, because I know you want to talk about this in our next questions, but you were a part of Google X and Labs, right?
Correct.
So it's kind of in your blood from the beginning to work both in a complex environment of Google, but also embrace failure and prototyping, even before the age of the current AI. So
yeah, I'm very excited about it. I would say it's the right combination of trying to build the future, literally, and at the same time understanding that the moment you have a glimpse of what could be useful for a large user base, you want to build it the right way. You can't just put a hack out there and hope to get mass adoption, because then you face consequences. Security being maybe one of the most important one that you need to be very careful about.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting to see that culture is kind of being adopted across the board more and more. So we'll see where it goes, and Repl.it's going to be a huge part of helping companies do that. So talking about scaling now, because I know that at Repl.it you really have helped scale startups, even individuals starting their own companies. So founders are using Repl.it to go from a natural language prompt to actually deploying a revenue generating startup now. And so eventually those viral apps need to scale, right? So how are you thinking about the infrastructure side of that equation? And how does partnering with Google Cloud ensure that a creator can seamlessly scale from like a weekend project into a fully scalable revenue generating project?
I think it's time I share the most well-kept secret about Repl.it, which is, in reality, every single thing you build on our platform is ready to scale from day zero. Immediately when you publish your application, our default option is Cloud Run. And as you know, Cloud Run is ready to scale to millions of users without our users even noticing. So, fun fact, we have to put a lot of payment limits and a lot of notifications in our product, because some of our early users created viral applications. They started to get lots of visits every day, and then they receive an invoice that they didn't expect, because of course we need to charge per amount of traffic that they receive. And on the flip side, I realized this is so seamless that they didn't even realize that it was happening. So we put a lot of emphasis in creating everything to be scalable from day one, because scalability cannot be an afterthought. It's really hard to bolt on a scalable solution after you build a prototype that is not scalable at all. So we made the decision to immediately build following the engineering best practices, using a lot of different Google Cloud products that would allow just whatever the user builds to scale very easily. And of course, it came with more engineering complexity, more hard work on our side, but it's paying off dividends. And that's the reason why, when an enterprise adopts Repl.it, they move from creating prototypes that really help them to define their product roadmap to launching those products, those features in product. And they're still deployed today on Repl.it in a totally seamless way. Even the users of the product from the outside, they don't understand that part of the product surface is actually powered by us. And that's the best case scenario. That's exactly how it should be. But we made this happen because of the partnership with Google Cloud and the amazing products that you have on that platform.
Yeah, and I think there has been this ongoing concern as we see more vibe-coded applications with the concept of technical debt, because even before AI, it's like making decisions that kind of lean more towards velocity. But it sounds like there is this balance that you're striking with reducing technical debt, because you're taking on a lot of the bulk of the work to make sure that reliability and scalability is already built into the infrastructure side of it. So people can still vibe code.
Yeah, they can vibe code and they can go really far, way more than you would expect. Sometimes I'm surprised when I see what our most advanced customers are building on top of Repl.it. The truth is, since the previous agent launch that we did in September, Agent 3, we started to add literally sub-agents that are focused exclusively on code review and re-architecting the software. So as the agent builds, rather than piling up the technical debt, we spend part of the compute to restructure your code base in order for it to be maintainable long term. So at times, maybe the people perceive our product to be slightly slower or a bit more expensive, but in reality, that choice pays off dividends later on when you can really take your product and put it in production in front of everyone. That's how we should think about vibe coding, not taking shortcuts immediately, because vibe coding is way more than prototyping, and that's what I love for everyone to understand. You can go really far with it, way more than you would expect.
Yeah, and it's a worthwhile investment now, right? It always has been, but the actual time that you personally invest is so much shorter than before.
Yeah, so. the ROI is unbelievable.
Yeah, like unseen. Okay, so finally, we know that Repl.it's mission is to bring the next billion software creators online, and this really aligns perfectly with our goal here at Google Cloud to democratize AI and computing. So when you're looking at this partnership between our two companies, what excites you the most about our combined impact over on the global startup ecosystem over the next decade?
I'll tell you a personal story. The first time I stepped at Google, it was, I believe, 16 years ago. I was a fresh intern, and during my orientation week, I think one of the first talks was about the fact that Google already had a few products in front of 1 billion users. That was absolutely mind-blowing for someone of my age. I really care about scalability, I really care about software engineering and AI back in those days. And I told myself, I really want to create something like that in the future, to have a product that's going to be in the hands of 1 billion people. And that's why I love Whelpley's mission. And I think we share in our company DNA the fact that when you build something remarkable, it shouldn't be just for a niche. So our mission is to empower the next billion software creators, and it takes not just a company to make that happen. I think that the partnership with you and the entire ecosystem, the fact that it's evolving so fast, it makes me feel that we're going to get there maybe even sooner than I was dreaming of. And this technology has to be democratized, and it's going to create an amazing amount of opportunities across the world. And it does already today. Like I hear a lot of stories of people creating another source of income with Rapid or getting promoted because of what they built on our product. Nothing beats that, and it's insane personal fulfillment when I hear about it.
Yeah, there's a ton of economic empowerment happening with these
100%,
tools.
yeah.
It's super exciting. I mean, you're already well on your way to your mission and your goal, and you have to have that goal and mission and put the stake in the ground for it to happen. So huge congratulations on everything at Replit. We're so excited about everything and the partnership between Replit and Google Cloud, and thanks for joining our Day 2 live stream.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone. And stick around, we will be back soon, so don't go anywhere. welcome back. Stephanie here again, and we are hot off the Developer Keynote here today at day 2 of Google Cloud Next, and we have 2 amazing leaders here at Google Cloud. We have Sarah Kennedy, Vice President in Marketing, and Ricky Robinett, Senior Director here for Google Developer Marketing. And so I want to dive straight into just talking about what we just saw at the Developer Keynote. We had a ton of exciting announcements on stage. So Sarah, I'm going to start with you. From your perspective, what is going to have the biggest immediate impact on developers' day-to-day workflows here?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to watch the just progression, the velocity of how fast developers can now ship things and put them in market. And I think with agents now, we're making it simpler and easier, of course, to build agents. But I think what's really exciting is for developers who are building for these large organizations where they work, having multi-agent orchestration and also having the ability to build trust through the governance tools that we're providing, as well as the security and infrastructure support we're providing. I think that's really exciting. I also personally get a little nerdy and really excited as when on the no-code side of things myself, for developers to be able to build high-code apps and then be able to work with their business partners who are able to contribute to that, and almost makes more of an organic team building together environment through Gemini Enterprise. So those are 2 of the things I'm personally most pumped about and I think is really exciting for the developer community.
Amazing. How about you, Ricky?
Oh my gosh, Steph, this is like trying to ask for a favorite child. It's the reason I only have 1 kid, because I don't want to have to think about it. Oh my gosh. I mean, a couple things I'll call out. First, the skills stuff. I think everybody's thinking about capacity and token optimization, and skills is such a great way to bring the knowledge at the exact moment you need it, not waste any tokens. So I'm really excited about the skills repository. And then all the observability stuff. I use this all the time. It's such a pain to try to debug and look at what's happening with your agents. So the ability to do that in a different way is so rad.
Yeah, and now we have MCP's servers set up for Google Cloud, which I think is an amazing
really
capability, just out of the box for developers to use.
So rad.
Okay, so for the developers watching right now who just want to get their hands dirty, then what was, out of the things that they were all just announced, where should they actually start?
Oh my gosh, do you want to go to?
For it.
I mean, I think ADK is the best thing to start with, right? I have found when you start using ADK, it just unlocks all these other things. It's like the beginning of the journey, but it's also, you can do it with 5 lines of code and get started. So it's the perfect place to start. Also, I'm a JavaScript developer, so the fact that you can do it in Python, you can do it in JavaScript, you can do it, there's a bunch of languages now with ADK, so meeting you where you are is really rad.
You can bring it straight to Google Cloud with Agent Engine and everything that's available with Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, so there's a really tight integration there too. We do know, however, that the AI landscape is changing incredibly fast. So how is Google Cloud helping developers upskill and stay ahead of the curve in all of this space?
Yeah, I think our Builder Hub is a big part of that equation, and thanks to Ricky and a lot of, exactly, he's going to be bashful about that, but a lot of the great work that we're doing. I mean, Google, by the way, has this legacy of building super strong communities, and I think people learn best and most effectively when they're able to just share with somebody else who's also on the same journey. So I think the things that we can do to put in place, whether it's through our Google developer groups, or other forms of community that give people a chance to learn together and to share, also where have they had challenges, what are they doing to sort of troubleshoot in their own workflows. I think that's really powerful, and that's the very best thing Google can do, is create space and opportunity for those communities to come together organically.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a softball one you gave me, Steph. I think I know what you want me to say, but I will just plus one. I've been at Google for a little over 6 months, and the community that Google has built, the communities that Google's part of, it's just amazing. We're in the GDE lounge. I'm sure you've been shouting that out, but it's just so incredible to look around and see all the developers that are part of our community here. And to answer your question, I can't not talk about gear. Yes, Steph's got it on the bingo card. So Gemini Enterprise Agent Ready, it's our program that really gives you the tools to get into this world of agents. And I don't know, for me, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a cynical developer. So when everyone started talking about agents, I'm whatever. I've been through this cycle before of stuff. And I think finally we're seeing no, this is a real thing. People really need this. And at least for me, I was I need something like gear, because I feel like I have to catch up for all the time I was cynical. I'm like paying the like cost of being too cynical.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Gear. We launched it this year, and now we have 2 new additional learning paths available, and it's all integrated with Google Skills. So it's not only about getting started with learning how to build with ADK, but now you can bring it in production and learn how to scale it on Google Cloud. So for everyone wanting to learn, like, please start with Gear. You also get 35 monthly credits with Google Skills, and we're adding a ton more content to Gear throughout the year. So be sure to check that out. Okay, so we know that building is always better when you're together. So can you talk about how the Google developer communities have kind of evolved over the last year, especially with the explosion of Gen AI?
Yeah, actually, Ricky, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite thing is helping new people discover the ability to shape their world with software. And I think we've been on this trajectory like really since the beginning of software development of that being the goal. I think it was Grace Hopper, I'm gonna like get the quote wrong, that basically said like the like preferred programming language is English, right? Our natural language. And we finally live in a world where that is true, which means like almost anyone has the ability to build. And I think for us, when we think about our community, just making it a place that's welcoming, that's inclusive, that's safe for those people, where whether it's, day 1 of starting to code or it's, year 60, that there's a spot for you. And I think we've just seen this explosion of people joining the community and trying to make sure everybody gets what they need. And the nice thing with the agent stuff is like we're also all learning together. So I've been coding for like 20, 30 years, but I'm just as early as someone who started today, really. And so I think giving people that space to realize like we're in it together is something I'm super stoked about.
Yeah, I love that. It's sort of just like this explosion of how accessible our technology has made building things. Like we want to support people who make things. And that means more and more people are going to be welcomed into this community because the access and the democratization of being able to ship something is now so much greater. And I think that's like one of the coolest things I've seen in the last year. Even just me and my very no-code vibe over here, being able, I built like, an app that is for my managing our household while I'm away, like being able to check in on the stats of what my now 7-month-old is doing when I'm not there. And the fact that I could do that, and I actually built that while he was in the middle of a nap, like on my phone. And like, that's crazy. But having the ability to actually create a community where everyone who can be a builder and the definition of builder is evolving, that's really special time to be a part of this. And it's kind of like, is that our next billion users at Google, is actually the developer community. So I think that's a really, really exciting time for us to be, providing these tools to the world, but also creating community for a totally new breed and type of person and builder to be able to learn from people who have been doing it for 15, 20, and 30 years.
Yeah, and I've seen that with our hackathons online that we run. Like one of the winners of our last ones was not someone who had all this expertise in AI or even Google Cloud, and they ended up being the grand prize winner, and we brought them to one of our conferences. And we have some winners here today, actually, from our latest Gemini Live Agent Challenge. So it's just like, it's so exciting. Like the barrier to entry is just so low now, but it's also, you can do things that you never could before. I also was talking to a GDG lead yesterday that I ran into, and she was like, hey, like, our community here in New York City is really different than San Francisco. Like in SF, somebody can show up, a startup founder will show up to a hackathon, do something in literally an hour, finish the hackathon, go home, come the next day, do another one. And in New York, she's like, well, it's not quite like that. Like we want a little bit more of a workshop in the beginning. It's going to take 2 full days. And that's the beauty of it, is that we do a lot of local regionalization with the events. And so I'm just seeing a lot of personalization when it comes to the developer experience today. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah. And I'm going to volunteer Sarah after next to come on a live stream to demo what she built.
I would love to, actually.
Right?
I've got many. I've got a portfolio going.
I feel like it's always my favorite thing is to see
really
what
cool.
people are building.
I love it.
Yes, I love it. Yeah. So just, zooming out a little bit, what is your favorite part about seeing what the community builds after next? Sarah, you're going to be one of those people to show us what you build.
Great.
And how can people watching get more involved with us, with our developer ecosystem as well?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll let you answer the last part of that. But I think on just what I'm excited about, number one, we've got, self-identified. We have, let's say, over 8,000 developers confirmed on site right now. But actually, again, as we're talking, it's kind of like, is that even I mean, there's 32,000 people here who can walk away and start to build something. I'm excited to see actually, again, kind of that bridge between business, functions, leaders, people who typically wouldn't be a part of that process. I'm excited to see what that melding of those minds will start to create, because I think that's going to unlock a totally different set of opportunities. And it's like, you're only as good as the concept and the brief and what you want to build. And I think having that vision and that clarity and bringing more developers closer to other parts of the business just by organic nature of wanting to make something great, I'm excited to see what that will start to produce.
Yeah, huge plus one. I mean, I kind of feel like the thing that's blown my mind joining Google is you can find us hopefully almost everywhere, right?
It's hard not to.
I'm looking out here, I see like Matt from DevRel and David from Dev Ecosystem, and it's like there's probably a GDG where you are, there's a Dev Fest, we're online, you can be part of the Google Developer Program, you can join Gear, right? And if we're not somewhere where you are, like, the best thing, come tell us, like tweet at us or whatever you're supposed to call it, X at us, post at us, whatever it is. Tim will tell me what I'm supposed to call that. Comment on LinkedIn, be like, why aren't you in this place, whether it's online or offline? And chances are, like, in the next 12 months, we will be there and we want to meet you.
Yeah, so many community events happening. Like, I know just from working with the teams in Dev Ecosystems, there's a ton of community events that are lined up throughout the year, and that's going to culminate in some of our summits and Dev Fests. But even if you're not in a place where you have easy access to that, we want to make it super easy for you to join our online communities and get your hands on the tech. Like, we're not just talking about it, we want you to participate in hackathons, we want you to go in our learning skills and take learning paths. So anyway, it's just in a really exciting time, and we hope these live streams help also.
For sure. And just as a reminder too, like everything that was shown today in the Dev Keynote, we open sourced all the code that's behind that, just so people can go play with it. So that's another place to engage.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, I think that's all the time we have, but what are you most excited? Just to wrap it up, what are you most excited about, like, just after next? What are you going to absorb?
I mean, like a nap? I don't know, what about you?
I was like, I'm going to sleep for 7 days.
True. We were dreaming about our naps.
I mean, Weezer's
tonight.
Weezer,
it's going to be
epic. Boone. I'm going to do a backflip off the table at the end of this.
He's been stretching.
Thing.
He was just stretching before we got on.
No, I mean, truly for me, it's just when we make all this stuff for developers, right? Like, that's the thing I love about Google Cloud is it's like, it's all technical tools to help developers build. And every year after events like this, someone makes something that I just never expect. And if you watch the Developer Keynote, we shouted out a few things, and I'm kind of most excited over the coming weeks and months to see the thing that we're all going to be like, that's the developer we want to shout out in the Developer Keynote next year.
Maybe we can start naming, the next TPU
version
after that. That'd be cool. No, I think also I'm excited because this is like Google Cloud Next is sort of the kickoff to a season of launching for Google overall. And so we've got weeks now that are between us and I/O. So I think putting tools in developers' hands is awesome, and all the new announcements, there's going to be even more goodness coming out in the next month as we go toward I/O. So I'm pumped to see what's built between now and then all the crazy things that are going to happen as we continue to launch new products into the market.
And I know that, I mean, we've been here at Google Cloud for several years. I know, Ricky, you just mentioned you're newer, but no, we've all been in tech for so long, and I feel like zooming out, I truly authentically believe that this is one of the most exciting times to be here and to be a part of this company. So I hope that our developer communities feel the same way and that you're going to be with us on this journey. And thank you to both of you for all the work going into Google Cloud Next. And we're excited to see you and see everyone here again next year, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all right,
great.
Don't go anywhere. We will be back here in a bit. So see you all soon.
Hey everybody, I'm Karl Weinmeister. I lead our platform developer relations team in Google Cloud. I'm super excited to be here at Google Cloud Next, joined by our special guest here, Jeff Whelpley. I'll turn over to Jeff here for a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm Jeff Whelpley. I'm the CTO and co-founder of GetHuman, a company that helps people with customer service problems get resolved faster. And I'm also a Google developer expert.
Wonderful. Well, one of the reasons I'm really excited to talk to Jeff today is that we're going to talk about the intersection of agents and some of the really cool technology that is around really how humans communicate, whether it's speech, voice to text, communicating over the web. His company and his interest areas are really at sort of the cutting edge of multimodal AI. So let's just start, Jeff, talking about some of the things you've seen at Next so far and you're looking forward to seeing. What's caught your eye so far, Jeff?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, I thought it was great to dive into Gemini Enterprise and the agent platform. I think Google's put a lot of effort and obviously a lot of investment into making Google Cloud kind of the premier place to host agents, autonomous agents for your enterprise. And I think that's something that I've seen a lot of people over the past year start to think about and start to utilize in a sort of an individual way. But now we're getting to an era where people want to actually have it as part of their workflows of like how their critical things that they do as part of their business are controlled by some of these autonomous agents. And now with a lot of the stuff that they're coming out with in this new Gemini Enterprise, it makes it a lot easier to do.
Absolutely. And we're in this new age with AI agents where it's going beyond the prototypes, getting that first hello world moment to using it every day and the business depending on the agents. And so that changes a lot of things. And, for instance, one of the, in my area, we work with a lot of open source projects, content creation, and we're doing that at scale. One of the challenges that we see along with many other open source maintainers is there's so much vibe coding going on where there's new code being generated, but there's processes further down the line in terms of code reviews and DevOps and all the good stuff that you were told to sort of eat your vegetables, if you will, when it comes to software development that really have to be done now or stuff starts piling up in the process. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in terms of some of your customers or even with your own dev teams at GetHuman where things are changing when it comes to enterprise agent development?
Yeah, so obviously within my own organization, we run into a lot of this that you're saying, but I'm also part of a number of CTO forums and groups within the Boston area where I'm from, go Boston, and it's a lot of the similar issues among all of these organizations where there's maybe multiple problems. Like one is adoption, and you have some early adopters and people within the organization, developers who are all in on AI tools. Like they're right there doing everything using Gemini CLI to the max and every other tool that's available. But then a lot of people that are harder to bring along. So that's problem number one. But then you run into a lot of problems once you get past that and you have people that are using on a regular basis of how do you ensure that all of the standards that we're used to in our traditional development workflows are still held up when you're producing instead of one PR or code change like a week or however your normal cadence to dozens and dozens every single day. You start to run into a lot more issues that you didn't have in the past in terms of reviewing, making sure that it meets compliance standards, security standards, etc. So you find a lot of people starting to not just use these tools to create a lot more change and positive things, but then have to rethink how do we actually want to work in as an organization? How do we want to make sure that all of these things that are important, compliance, security, etc., are done in a way that are different, that fit in with this new agentic era?
Absolutely. Well, a couple of approaches I've heard from customers is one, sometimes senior staff members take on that responsibility of governance where they're getting a lot of the pull requests coming in from the rest of the team, and they're responsible for bringing it all together, ensuring that those standards are followed. Also, you have some customers that are taking that agentic approach when it comes to things like watching cost, enforcing policies, etc. What's your perspective on the right approach to take in what situations?
It depends on the organization, obviously. I think that for us, having somebody who's a lead who can kind of define a lot of those policies definitely helps. I've always thought that really the best approach is to have like a set of guardrails. When you give people these tools and just let them kind of do whatever, maybe in a very limited fashion for experiments and that type of thing, but when it's part of your critical processes, having like skills, for example, that adhere to all of your company standards and make sure that, they Git check-in, just to give an example, that it's done in the right way that you want it to, and people don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every time. So skills is a big part of it, as well as the review process, making sure that once your PR is submitted, that not only humanize, but maybe even you have some agentic code reviewers as well. So there's a couple things like that you can put in place to make things easier for sure.
Great, yeah, and so, when you talk about skills, that can mean a couple different things. Number one, upskilling your organization in AI. Number two is using skills. So one of the things that we announced here this week at Next was Google Agent Skills. So you'll be able to pull those into your environment and kind of get a jump start, not only on the products, but security best practices and things like that. So Jeff, when it comes to using skills and MCP servers, et cetera, what do you think are the most useful, kind of turbo boost to the development process that you've seen? Like what, if you just take your sort of standard environment, you install anti-gravity or Gemini CLI, it's a great starting point. Yep. What really is needed to kind of help your development team work at its full potential?
Yeah, so some of it's practice, obviously, but I do think that some of it is almost forcing them to, so this isn't like a tool, like a technology-based thing, it's more of like a practice-based thing.
Yeah.
And there is like a lot of hesitation, and the way I found it with some of my developers that weren't familiar and hesitant is to sort of be a little bit heavy-handed sometimes and be like, okay, just try it. Put aside your reservations and just spend a week or some time period. Just don't, for developers who are used to writing their own lines of code, sometimes they can't get out of that habit. So it's like, don't write your own lines of code, just use the Gemini CLI, just go down and use these other tools, just try it. And inevitably they might come up with some issues or whatever, but that ultimately leads to then maybe some adjustments, but then they also see the good sides of it, and ultimately leads to some good outcomes.
Yeah, I strong believer in that. My little story there was we had released anti-gravity, and for some time I wasn't using it, I'll be honest. I just did, there's so much technology, you're starting with certain things, you pick up things a little bit later. I was still using VS Code at the time, and I said, I've really got to switch over. And so I just told myself, I'm going to use anti-gravity, nothing but it for 1 week, and then kind of burn the boats behind me. We're ready to go. And then for using it a week, I just got comfortable. You get into some new habits, and it worked out great. And I think a lot of these technologies is just all about, give it a shot, learn, and then at least I can say for myself, that's what's exciting about this phase of technology that we're in, is it kind of encourages you to just try new things, get out of your comfort zone, and you come out on the other side learning a lot of things, feeling more confident in your abilities.
A year ago, they had some of these CLI tools available. Not as good, obviously. But I remember thinking, like, oh, okay, that's available, I can see its use. I'm never going to do that. I'm always going to be writing code to some degree, and maybe I'll use these in some fashion or whatever else. I've done like 180. Like I've changed my thinking dramatically, and I cannot see myself ever going back. And I think most people who go down this path will ultimately think the same.
Absolutely. Well, so we're wrapping up here. It's been a great conversation, Jeff. I just want to leave our viewers with a couple of things. Number one, if you heard about anything cool, or just there's anything that you saw on the stage today and you want to play with, check out the Code Labs that we have at codelabsdevelopers@google.com. We have over 100 tagged with Next 2026. They've even got credits. You can find out about joining our Google Developer Program. Give that a shot. Jeff, any other final things you want to share with our guests that are watching from wherever in the world they are?
Just to give a shout out to Angular. Even though I'm a GDE for AI for the web, I'm also an Angular GDE, and so I always
go
appreciate
Angular.
that. Yeah, and one of our former Angular development leads, was one of the speakers for the keynote today, Emma. So I was happy to see that. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. It's a wrap.
Welcome to the live stream here at Google Cloud Next. We're at day 2. We had a great developer keynote this morning. My name is Ankur Kotwal. I lead global developer relations at Google Cloud, and I'm thrilled to be talking to Salman Ladha today, who joins us from the team at Wiz. He leads product marketing for Wiz Code. Hi, Salman.
Ankur, it's a privilege to be here today with you and all of the developers tuning in from around the world.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. So I'm really excited to be talking to you. And you know, it's a really exciting time for us because Wiz is joining Google Cloud. But perhaps not everyone on the stream is familiar with who Wiz is and what you do. So could you provide us an overview?
Absolutely. So Wiz is a cloud security platform that helps organizations protect everything they build and run in cloud and AI environments. Now, our flagship product is Wiz Cloud. This is really where we made a name for ourselves in the industry. And the way it works is by agentlessly giving cloud security teams complete visibility into their security posture. Now, over time, we've broadened the solution. We've shifted right with Wiz Defend, which helps security operations teams respond and contain to active threats. And we've also shifted left with Wiz Code, which helps developers like yourselves ship secure AI applications, but in a secure manner.
Oh, that's awesome. So today at the developer keynote, Wiz featured prominently, and you know, Wiz had several announcements today as well. So, but like rather than just talking about the capabilities, can you help us understand what problems is Wiz trying to solve for developers?
Yeah, it's such an exciting time to be not only in software development, but also software security. Now, our goal is really simple. We want to empower all of you and every engineering team in the world to go fast with AI, to build with AI, and to deliver amazing software. But of course, we want to do this in a way that's secure. The challenge that we're seeing is code is being generated faster than any security team can review it. And so part of the announcements today are how can we meet developers in their AI native tooling, the ones that you're using today, not just the ones from yesterday. And so if we want to dive into some of the key capabilities, we've recently launched Wiz Code plugins that enable you to work directly with your agents in your coding environment, such that as soon as code is generated, Wiz will scan it, it'll surface misconfigurations, hard-coded secrets, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities before it's even committed to the repository. So this is all about that proactive risk reduction, right?
That's awesome. And you said coding agents. So I assume this includes like Google Anti-Gravity, Gemini CLI, Claude Code, VS Code.
Exactly. Whatever the tools that developers are using, that's where we want to be.
And that's actually one of Wiz's superpowers, right? Wiz has always been multi-cloud and is supporting developers across all of the developer tools, the popular developer tools.
Exactly. So it's not just in developer environments, but even when we think about cloud, right? Whether an organization is deploying their infrastructure on Google Cloud or other cloud service providers, we want to help them protect everything they build and run in cloud environments, regardless of the stack that they choose.
That's awesome. So, and it's very common for developers to actually have hybrid environments, multiple models, multiple cloud providers that they use. You said something earlier that you want to burn down security at machine speed. Is this just shift left again?
Sorry. The reason I'm laughing, and I'm sure many of you tuning in might be chuckling or rolling your eyes, I think shift left is a pretty contentious topic. I come from a background in application security, so I've seen the journey of shift left over the years. So taking a step back, I think shift left was the right idea in theory. It struggled in execution.
Okay.
Right? Because we shifted the responsibility of security onto developers, and all of a sudden in your pipelines, you had these scanners raising alerts, but many of them might not have actually been real issues, which created a level of friction in the security program. There's perhaps a lack of trust. Mm-hmm. From the security perspective, this was our approach to scaling expertise. I'm sure many of you know, you vastly outnumber application security teams. Historically, that ratio was 100 to 1. With agents, it's closer to 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
Right? The beautiful thing in this moment now is that AI unlocks scale and context unlocks that trust and confidence in what you're seeing. So this is a long-winded answer, Ankur. You asked, is this just shift left? I prefer to think of it as shifting down. Right, we are abstracting the responsibility of security directly into the agents themselves, so that coming back to our goal, you as developers can focus on building amazing software, knowing the platform itself is taking care of the security.
I love that, because otherwise it just seems like we're adding more burden onto software developers rather than have the platform help you. And that's exactly what you're saying. By shifting down, we're putting some more of that responsibility back onto the platform itself. So that's fantastic. So look, I said this in the developer keynote earlier today, and I'm going to repeat it. Like, I'm using lots of agentic developer tools. Many folks I know are. A lot of code is being written. I'm writing a lot of code. I don't always know that my code is secure. What are your customers telling you?
I think it's a very interesting time, because when I talk to customers, and particularly security teams, they are acknowledging, yes, our development teams are going fast with AI, and it's an active character in the software development lifecycle. But the conversations are starting to veer in an interesting direction, where they're also highlighting how traditionally non-technical teams are actively building AI applications. HR, finance, right? That list goes on. And so that's where a lot of the conversations are also going, where it's not just thinking about how we can secure the applications devs are building, but also these traditionally non-technical team members.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what all of these agentic tools have enabled, is for everyone to be a builder.
Everyone's a builder, yes.
You know, like we really sort of increase the size of the pie of people that are building software. Again, in the developer keynote today, we talked about low-code agents as well. And so, you know, maybe we should switch to a demo. I'm sure you've got something to show us, Salman, that can show us how the product works.
I would absolutely love to. When I heard we'd be doing a developer live stream, I knew we had to bring a demo. So why don't we shift over? So here we have a fictitious application. It's called DataBot, and we actually vibe coded it, right? This is a tool designed to give our executive team 24/7, 365 insights into the business. So you can see I'm going to prompt DataBot with a question on the teams generating the most amount of revenue. It's querying the database, and just like that, it's listing out all of the relevant information. So this is an example of the types of applications we're seeing across the board, right? Those traditional non-technical team members building.
And in some ways, like vibe coding almost had a negative connotation in the early days, where people thought of vibe coding as a throwaway code, as something that, it's not going to production, it's going to need maintenance for a long time. But actually, the DataBot here is a great example of something that's a tool that's needed at a point in time, and vibe coding helps you solve that in a very quick way. So this is exactly the same type of tools that we see, that we're building internally at Google, and we hear it from customers all the time.
Now, it is incredible for driving productivity, but the challenge is some of these teams may not have the context into the potential risk these applications are introducing into their organizations. So let's shift gears. I want to show you how a product like Wiz gives security teams visibility into AI applications like DataBot, and how we can help surface some of the potential risks that it might be creating. So this is the Wiz platform, this is the dashboard, and first and foremost, we start from a position of visibility. So as I mentioned, Wiz is agentlessly connecting into both cloud and developer environments, which allows us to very quickly build this comprehensive inventory of all of the AI technology in the organization's environment. So we've got agents, models, guardrails, code repos with AI, the list goes on. Now, all of this ends up building out the Wiz security graph.
Yeah, this is super cool. I love the security graph. I'm looking forward to you bringing this up.
It's one of my favorite things, as well as one of our customers' favorite things. So you can think of this as a living map of the application logic, the architecture, as well as the potential security risks that DataBot and other applications might introduce. So if we look at the security graph, here's my DataBot application. I can actually click into it as a security practitioner and quickly understand what the application is doing. I have visualizations into the tools that DataBot has access to, so it can query a database, list tables, as well as map out the specific model that it's running.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also noticed that you've got specific colors here for your security graph. I assume that means something.
Yes, all of these represent different types of technology. So right here is an identity. The green represent potential databases as well as PII. And we can also trace out the fact that an application like DataBot is publicly exposed to the internet, and we have validation from it. But I think I know what you're getting at, because you were part of the keynotes, and I know what you really want these developers to see. So in the era of AI, one of the best forms of defense that we have as defenders is to use AI on ourselves. And the best solution for that is the Wiz Red Agent. So this is one of 3 platform-wide agents that Wiz has built, designed to help security teams proactively harden their risk posture.
Okay.
So you can think of the Red Agent as an AI-powered attacker. And you can see on this particular issue, it was able to gain unrestricted access to sensitive information, things like API credentials, PII, credit cards, and employee compensation data.
Oh, wow. That
Yikes.
Sounds, dangerous.
Not good. The cool thing about this agent is it's also enumerating all of the steps it took to arrive at this particular conclusion. And we provide security teams with the reproduction command if they want to validate this themselves also. So really cool.
So that's cool. So now you have the best AI attacker working on your side.
Working on our behalf, and it really gives defenders that first mover advantage over attackers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I do want to highlight one really important thing for all of the developers tuning in, because we've done that comprehensive inside-out risk assessment, but also the outside-in. So when this does get assigned to a developer like you, you have the confidence in knowing this is a validated attack path to actually prioritize. So I think it's quite clear. The next step is remediation.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and fix this? And to do that, I'm going to enlist the help of our second agent, the green agent. So what you're seeing here is the remediation plan listed out by the Wiz green agent. So where red is your AI-powered attacker, green is your AI-powered defender and fixer.
And so I think this is, sorry to interrupt, I
course.
think this is what you meant by the shifting down.
Shifting down,
Right?
exactly.
Where you identified these problems with red agent identified them, but green agent is actually going to help us fix them. It's not just being thrown over the fence to the developers to say it's your problem now.
That's a very common phrase that I've heard, throwing them over the fence.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. And from a security perspective, this is often where a lot of remediations can stall because they just don't know who to assign this to. They can't trace the right developer. Because we're agentlessly connecting into developer environments, we can trace the original repo, the branch, and even the code author that originally introduced the issue. So you can see here, the very first step that Green Agent is suggesting is to assign this to Roy Resnick. This is, of course, one of our founders. But then if we go down the steps, it's listing out everything that we need to do to address this particular issue, including remediations in code. And this is where it gets really cool for me, Ankur, because we can work hand in hand. The green agent can partner with your coding agent to burn down that security risk at machine speed. So why don't we go ahead and assign this to the particular coding agent, and we'll open the GitHub issue. Now, for the sake of time, I've pre-populated over here. Now you can see all of that rich context from the Wiz environment is populated right here in the GitHub issue. We invoke a pipeline action, and just like that, the coding agent has responded and built out the PR that needs to be pushed by the developer, who of course has the final review.
That's awesome. And then your CI/CD pipeline can take it from there. But the fact is, we found an issue, red agent found an issue. We then used green agent to suggest remediations, proposed that to, via GitHub PR. We pulled our coding agent in by commenting it into the PR, and now we have a fix ready to be merged.
Machine speed remediation.
Yeah.
There's one more thing that I want to show, which is if we go back to the Wiz security graph, you'll notice that this particular compute instance actually has a live threat on it.
Oh.
So we're going to go ahead and investigate this. And this is being flagged by the third platform-wide agent that Wiz delivers. So we have the red agent, which is your AI-powered attacker actively trying to find exploits. We have the green agent, which is the AI-powered fixer. We have one more, which is the blue agent, which is your AI-powered defender. You can think of this as your security operations partner. It's actively monitoring the environment, looking for suspicious activity that it deems to be an active threat in the environment in that moment. So if we look at what Blue Agent has found, we have this quick AI-powered story. We can see that it classified this threat as malicious. And similar to its peers, we can detail the specific steps and the summary that Blue Agent took to say why this was a particular threat. So it's investigating different signals. This one was a neutral signal. It actually reduced the suspicion with this. But then these two final ones are what kicked it over the edge and said, you know what, this is a very urgent threat that we need to respond to. And of course, we have predefined playbooks that can run automatically.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow. So we caught something in flight right now, and we also have remediations for that.
So hopefully you can see how these three agents create this beautiful virtuous loop, right?
Yeah.
Red agent is actively exploiting to try to find the issues. Green agent is driving fixes at the source, and blue agent is actively defending, keeping tabs on the environment.
Yeah, excellent. That's so cool. I'm sure there's lots of other developers on the stream that are just being as wowed as I am at the moment. So where would you recommend they go next? What's the next sort of call to action for devs that want to check this out?
The next call to action that I'd suggest you check out is go to your AI native IDEs, their marketplaces, and download the Wiz plugin. It's the first step that you can take. If you're not a Wiz customer, then perhaps talk to your leadership team and your security organization on how we can incorporate Wiz code or the broader platform directly into your environment. Because like I said at the top, at the end of the day, we want to help you go fast.
Yeah.
Build with AI, deliver amazing software with AI, but abstract the responsibility of security into the platform itself.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the stream today.
It's my pleasure,
It's
Ankur.
been great to have you here. And stay tuned for more from Google Cloud Next 2026.
Hey everyone, welcome back, and I am so excited because we have Harrison Chase, who is the CEO and co-founder of LangChain, one of the most exciting open source frameworks for building and designing applications with LLMs. I'm sure you've all heard of it already, but Harrison, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I want to dive straight into something that you've been talking a lot about online. Recently, over the last several years, we've heard so much about model weights. There's a ton of people talking about that, but even though they get a lot of attention, AI agents actually learn at what you call the agent harness layer. So for our audience, what is an agent harness, and why is agent harness engineering as crucial as prompt engineering and fine-tuning?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one we've been thinking a lot about. So an agent at the end of the day is an LLM running in a loop and calling tools, and that sounds simple, but where the harness comes in is it's that scaffold, it's that harness around the model that connects to the tools, connects it to the environment, helps it basically orchestrate what is going on. And so over the past few years, we've seen this idea of an LLM running in a loop calling tools evolve, and more things go into the harness. So things like skills and sub-agents, which are becoming key parts of these agentic systems, are now part of most harnesses out there. And so we've started to build up this idea of what a harness should be. That being said, the right harness is still specific to kind of like the task at hand. You might want different tools for a particular task, and at the very least, you're going to want different prompts as well. And so there's kind of this layer around the model that connects it to external sources of data and computation, and that is the harness. And changing that harness can be just as effective and oftentimes way easier than changing the weights of the underlying model. So one of our researchers did a blog recently where there's Terminal Bench. Terminal Bench is a great benchmark for coding tasks. He took Deep Agents, which is our open source model agnostic harness. You can use it for other things besides coding, but coding is a great use case. So he took that, and we went from 30th to 5th just by tuning the harness. So no changes of models, nothing like that. And so I think that shows like how much alpha there is in kind of like changing the harness. And that's where we spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time thinking about harness engineering and how we can make it easier for folks, and how people can build their own harnesses that are specific for their applications.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of flexibility, agility, and power in focusing on the harness layer, especially when you have more control at that layer as well as a developer.
I think, yeah, I mean, a big part of, like if you think about building an agent for a particular task, like what makes it different than like just ChatGPT? It's all of the context and tools that it has. And so then how does it access those contexts and tools is a key part. One of the really interesting trends that we've seen, for example, is using a file system as a generic way to give it access to tools and actually to run tools, like run scripts, and then also access just knowledge in terms of like markdown files. And this is because LLMs are so good at interacting with file systems. And so there's this interesting thing as well where there are properties of the LLMs that make certain parts of the harness better or worse. So these LLMs are really good at interacting with file systems. Let's give them a file system. Now the fun part here is the file system doesn't have to be like a real file system. It can be like what we call a virtual file system. So in Deep Agents, we have this concept where you can store all this knowledge in a database or something like that, but still expose it to the LLM like it's in a file system. And I think this is one of the clever tricks of like harness engineering. You basically take this data and you expose it in particular ways that are best suited for the model to use it as part of this harness. And so there's a lot of really clever tricks you can do.
Yeah, a lot of interesting tricks. I do want to touch on how the model actually does help influence the harness, but before I touch on that, we do know that a lot of developers use LangGraph for code, state logic, and complex harnesses. So here at Google Cloud, we built our reasoning engine as this secure, managed environment for deploying LangChain and LangGraph for your applications. So in your view, what is the value of combining an open source framework like LangChain or LangGraph and a managed infrastructure like our Gemini Enterprise agent platform and the included reasoning engine?
Yeah, I think building an agent that works locally is just kind of like step one of the journey. And it's actually, it is a long journey to go from an agent that works for like a Twitter demo to something that's running in production. And part of that is getting the agent to behave well enough. And that's where all of the harness engineering or using LangGraph to create more deterministic workflows or more specific workflows can be really interesting. But the other part is scaling the agent up. having it, like agents, they're long-running and stateful applications. So how do you keep an agent running for a long amount of time if the process for some reason dies halfway through step 21? Like, do you resume from the start, or do you resume from step 21? When you have a bunch of incoming requests, oftentimes we see that people kick off like thousands of agents in parallel. How do you scale up? How do you scale your infrastructure? All of that is benefits of a managed runtime, and so I think that's a lot of the benefits we see with the partnership with Google.
Nice. And as I understand it, we've also built Reasoning Engine in partnership. Can you tell us a little bit about the collaboration?
Yeah, that was like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember when LangChain first came out. There was, I think it was like LangChain on Vertex or something was the original name of it. The name, we're not great at naming. You guys have changed namings a bunch as well, so I don't know what the original name was. But I know early on, I think there was something like LangChain on Vertex, and that's evolved to a lot of what's in Reasoning Engine today. And it's basically just makes it easy to run open source frameworks, including LangChain and LangGraph on Google infrastructure.
Nice. So just talking about improving harness code, you've noted that improving it requires traces or logs of every agent step. And a lot of our users actually run agent workloads on Google Cloud, but they might use something like LangSmith for these traces. So when we're reviewing these traces, is there anything that you look for, a signal that a team should then go ahead and know that they should optimize or rewrite their agent's code?
Yeah, I think there's a few things you can look for. Some of it is kind of like user feedback, whether it's direct or indirect. So everyone knows about like thumbs up and thumbs down, and you can put that in the chatbot, and if a user gives a thumb down signal, you probably want to look at the trace to see what went wrong. But there's other kind of like implicit user signals as well. So if I say something to the chatbot like, no, you did it incorrectly, I didn't leave a thumbs up or thumbs down, but by looking at my reaction, you could tell that there was probably a mistake that was made. And so one of the things that we do in LangSmith, and LangSmith is our infrastructure for observability and evals, and the reason we think they're tightly coupled is exactly this reason. We have what we call like online evals. They run over all of these traces that come in. We spend a ton of time to like make it really easy to ingest traces at scale, query them at scale, and then do kind of like transformations and get insights over them. And so one of the things is these online evals. You can run what we call kind of like an inferred error eval. And so if you see me as the user say something to the agent like, no, you did that wrong, or like, okay, but that's not exactly what I meant, you might want to, we'll basically leave a little signal on the trace that's like, hey, this is bad. There's an inferred error here. Side note, this is where Gemini Flash comes in really handy, because you want to use a cheap and fast model for these online evals. And so I think that's a great use case for Gemini Flash. So there's all these signals you can look at and start to attach to these traces. And then once you have these traces with these feedback in LangSmith, whether it's real user feedback or these online evals, you can use that to query traces, slice and dice traces, track kind of like things over time, and then manually, or everything in the SDLC is getting automated. And so you can also use an agent to look at these traces, suggest changes to your agent code, to your agent prompts, and this kind of like life cycle of agent improvement is really centered around traces. And that's what we've built with LangSmith.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like the couple of things I've noted is actually using AI effectively across the entire SDLC and picking the right model for it, and doing things like inferred errors, which I think is a kind of a mindset shift. It's like you don't have to have the clear, explicit thumbs up or thumbs down in this case.
Yeah, and I think like there's evals that we can provide off the shelf as LangSmith. So this inferred error is one. We also have another one where we see if the agent's basically running in a loop and calling the same tools repeatedly, which suggests that it's getting confused or making mistakes. But I think another really important thing is that a lot of these evals are application specific. Like what a legal AI what a good response for a legal AI might look like is pretty different than what a good response for a financial AI might look like, and you might want different signals for different ones. And so another thing that we spend a lot of time on is making it easy for people to create their own evaluators that are tuned for their domain. And so I do actually think like the percentage of off-the-shelf kind of like evaluators that you can use is going up. But there's still like a really good chunk of them that you're going to have to build yourself as an agent engineer or something like that. And so we want to make that easy as well.
Yeah, just that little last mile that you might have to fine tune, even if it is off the shelf.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, talking a little bit more about the models, I wanted to get to this. So the harness obviously wraps around a foundational model. And so here at Google, we know that Gemini has some pretty unique capabilities like multimodality, expanded context window, ability to do advanced function calling. So how does that impact harness engineering? Does it allow you to have more simple harnesses or enable more complex workflows?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one of the things that we're still, I'd say as an industry, like figuring out. So maybe for the first like 2 years of LangChain, I think there was a lot of, I wouldn't even call it harnesses. I'd call it kind of like scaffolds built around the model, where you're not, like the idea of an agent and the idea of an agent harness is that you run the model in a loop and let it call tools. And then there's like small deviations of that, but like that's the core idea. And a lot of LangChain and a lot of the more deterministic LangGraph flows, they weren't that. They were structuring it in more ways. And a big reason why that was the case is the models weren't good enough yet. And I'd say about a year ago, the models started to get really good, and they started to get good enough to actually run them in a loop. And so so that's when these agent harnesses started to be more common, and that's when we started to figure out kind of like the primitives to put in these agent harnesses. Now they're still evolving. So context window is a great one. Like long context window lets you run the harness longer without having to do a compaction event. So a big part of a lot of the harnesses today is compaction. When you reach a certain kind of like threshold, you'll condense all the information into a summary or something, and then resume from that. The longer the context window, the less you have to do that, and usually the better performance. Multimodality is a good one as well. So like I mentioned file systems earlier. The agent's really good at interacting with file systems. When it sees an image file in the file system, what does it do? If it can't handle kind of like images, then it can't really work with that effectively. Same with videos. So I think one of the big places where we've seen Gemini be popular is in these multimodal settings. And I think like, so some of these things are just like net new features, like supporting multimodality, great. That's something that you can just like add into the harness. Some of them, like the context window, changed kind of like the importance of things in the harness. And then another really interesting thing, which I think we're still, again, figuring out as an industry, is like how specific does the harness need to be to the model? So what I mean by that is that sometimes these models are trained on particular functions or particular instructions. And so you might want to have like a base system prompt in the harness, or even the tools that are exposed, you might want those to be specific to the model that it's interacting with. And so we're doing a lot of research on this now to try to figure out, hey, we're using OpenAI versus Anthropic versus Google models. What does the difference need to be in the system prompt, and what tools need to be the same or different? But at the same time, there's also this, like the whole point of these models are their general purpose, like intelligent beings. So like how much do these differences matter? And does having a harness that kind of like works well across all of them, is that actually more general purpose and more robust to changes in the future? I think this is kind of like an open question in the industry right now.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because you've been around since basically the heyday, the beginning of these LLMs. So how have you seen the evolution of the capabilities of the foundational models, and alongside what you've been building at LangChain? Like, has it really changed your trajectory as well?
I think there's some things that have changed and some things that haven't. So one thing that has absolutely changed, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but like the models have just gotten good enough where we can build actual agents. So I don't know if you remember AutoGPT.
Yeah.
It was like fastest. It was like the early version of OpenClaw, right? It was like the fastest growing GitHub project, and it came out a few months after LangChain, really early 2023, took off like wildfire. No one really uses it anymore. Why not? Like under the hood, it's the same architecture as OpenClaw, basically. It's a model running a loop calling tools. The issue was the models just weren't good enough at the time. And so that's why we invested in LangChain for chaining things together, and then LangGraph for more deterministic workflows. But now I think these models are good enough, and we're seeing a lot of interest in deep agents, which is our agent harness. And so that's been like the big changes. Basically, AutoGPT wasn't really viable. Now it's viable. That's the change in the models. But there are some things that don't change. So one of the key things that we think doesn't change is it's really easy to build a prototype, but it's hard to get it into production.
Right.
And you need to, and in order to bridge that gap, there's some infrastructure concerns, but there's a lot of just like reliability and performance concerns. And this is where observability and evals has always been a key part of that journey, and I think always will continue to be a key part of that journey. You can't really improve if you don't know what happened, and that's where observability comes in. And then when you do improve, these LLMs are great, but like they're not robust at all. You make one change and like something else might go completely off the deep end, right?
Yeah.
And so you need like a good robust eval set to make sure that you're doing regression testing and actually kind of like consistently improving. And I think no matter what like the LLMs do, no matter what the agent harnesses do, no matter what they look like, whether they're graphs or whether they're these LLMs running a loop, you'll always want observability and you'll always want evals.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to kind of see what's changed and what hasn't.
I think observability and eval is going to continue to just be one of the most important topics, like throughout not only this year, but just ongoing. And I know a lot of folks have been talking about it a little bit, but now it seems like the attention is all on eval and observability, especially for these more serious use cases as people realize how important reliability is. The other thing I want to touch on that you mentioned that's really like a trend that I've seen is being ahead of your time, developing this orchestration beyond maybe some of the other technology that it relies on, needing to catch up a little bit. Like when video streaming became huge back in the early 2000s, there were a lot of companies building video streaming platforms, but the infrastructure of the network just wasn't built enough yet. And it seems like with foundational models, it's kind of the same thing. So now we can really focus on the core agent logic, eval, and benchmarking at that instead.
Yeah, I think in some ways, it's fortunate that it took like 2 years, 2.5 years for models to get good enough to power a lot of these agents, because we could build some of this infrastructure. We could build observability and evals, and I think now that agents are starting to work, we have some of this stuff in place that can help kind of like supercharge some of that. At the same time, like I think the landscape is crazy. It changes like every week, every month. Like there's new capabilities that come out, and so I do also think that it's still even the models are in a way better place than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, but it's still so early, and there's so much that will change as well.
Yeah, which makes it exciting too.
Yes.
So one thing about just looking into the future, something that you've highlighted recently is something called meta harness. So this is where, as I understand it, this is where agents can analyze logs to suggest code changes. And so with this, I know that with Google Cloud, we have something called Gemini Code Assist, which is our AI-powered code assistance at every layer of SDLC as well. We also have LangChain orchestration. So with the two, do you see that this is becoming a reality with meta harnesses? Could agents soon maybe automatically rewrite their Lang graph or a code on Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, for example?
Yeah, I think that is a reality. I think and the way that I think about it, so there's two things that I add. One, I think you've got like 2 of 3 pieces, I think there. You've got LangChain as like the code, the infrastructure, LangChain, LangGraph, deep agents, the code for running the agent. You've got Gemini Code Assist for kind of like rewriting some of the code. The thing that you also need is the visibility into what the agent did, because basically the way this loop works is you run the agent over a bunch of data points. You then see what happened and whether it was good or whether it was bad. This is where you need evals. And then you feed that back into the agent and have it rewrite the code and then run in a loop. So I think if you take kind of like the harness with LangChain, LangGraph, deep agents, you take LangSmith, observability, evals, you take Gemini Code Assist for some of the code rate, that's kind of like the loop that will turn it. And one way to think about this is that's something that we as humans would do manually. Like that's the job of an AI engineer, like to basically run the agent, look at the data, see what went wrong, suggest changes, have hypotheses for like what would work. But everything in the SDLC is getting automated. And so is that like turning of the flywheel. And so I think that's something that is still really new. And like right now, it is absolutely more kind of like researchy and Twittery and experimentally. But like I think that is totally viable. I think a really interesting question arises there is like, where do you put the human in the loop? Like, do you actually push these code changes, or do you create a PR first? And what are you actually pushing? Are you pushing code changes, or are you changing like the prompt or the memory or the knowledge base that it has access to? I think there's not necessarily any kind of like one right action. I think there's actually a bunch of different actions that can kind of stem downstream, because there's a bunch of different things that AI engineers can do. And so in some way, how we think about like the next evolution of LangSmith and LangChain is we're really creating this like AI engineer, like
right.
And so that'll help kind of like spin this like data flywheel or improvement flywheel.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we develop best practices around all of this, then something changes and then there's another best practice, and it's all very personal too to everyone's workflows. So what are some of the things that you're most excited about in terms of what you're building now, and it's going to really impact like where we're going in the future?
We've talked about a lot of them already. I think agent harnesses are one. I think like what is the right way for agents to interact with their environment, and I think we have some idea of what that looks like for coding, and I think to some extent that's general purpose. But I think there are absolutely kind of like nuances for different domains, and how can we make it easy to test and build these agent harnesses. This improvement loop, taking the traces, taking evals, suggesting changes, like that's really interesting to us. Maybe the third thing that I'd call out, and this relates to the improvement loop and the agent harness actually, is memory. Memory is a really, really interesting topic for us. I think right now, memory is tightly coupled to a harness. There aren't really standards around what memory should be or what it should look like. There are some, like you could argue that like agents.md and skills are like a form of memory. But like, you know, you could also argue they're not, and like there's probably other forms as well. So right now, like memory is really tightly coupled to an agent harness. Maybe that'll change in the future, but right now it's really tightly coupled. And then memory, like, you know, so that ties to agent harnesses. It also ties to this improvement loop, because I think definitionally by memory we mean something that kind of like improves over time and that learns from past experiences. And so I think like you know, we've always had these kind of like two sides of LangChain. We've had the open source with agent harnesses, and we've had LangSmith with observability and evals. And I think memory is kind of like the bridge that connects them in a lot of ways. And so we're spending a lot of time thinking about like what that looks like, how that interacts with harnesses, are there standards for that, how that can be improved through this like flywheel. And so I'd add that as a third thing that we're really interested in.
I know it's a really hot topic because everyone tries to improve their agent systems. So excited to see where that space goes with memory. But thank you so much for joining us for this live stream. I know that we have limited time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Next.
Thank you for having me.
What is up, Google Cloud friends and family? Super excited to be back here on the live stream this afternoon, and I'm joined by two awesome people, Rody and Kevin, who are going to be sharing some cool things that we're doing in the languages side for Google Cloud developers. I guess also Google developers, right?
Yeah.
Or any developer.
Yeah, any developer, yeah.
Let's talk about any developer. So, what are we going to be showing everyone here today?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about people that have been building with like cross-platform types of applications is we have this framework from Google called Flutter, and it can compile to Android, iOS, desktop, and web. And one of the big things that's made that possible is Dart, because it can compile to all these different runtimes and formats. And people who are trying to build these applications really like not having to build a backend. So Firebase has been really popular. And so one thing we're really excited about launching is support for Dart for Firebase functions. So as a Flutter developer, I can take any code that I'm running in my Flutter app, move it back to the backend, and be able to just still write Dart without having to write Node.js or Go or anything else.
That's super cool. So I actually have deployed Flutter apps.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. One of the things I love, right, to the point of like cross-platform compatibility, it's like, hey, we want a web app.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
You want an Android app.
Yeah.
Most Android apps are Flutter, if I remember correctly, anyway, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, I think the stat was a plurality of new apps on the Play Store are, if you look at all the frameworks, a plurality are Flutter.
Yeah. But it speaks to the portability, right? Because, we talked about single-page apps for a long time, but same thing still applies. Like, you can't, cross-compilers are getting better, but still, taking advantage of like language native things is super cool. In particular, if you think about LLM support and all that. Yeah. So, Kevin, why is this so cool?
Oh my gosh. It's crazy because I've been working with the team, months now, getting ready for this launch.
You're too close to it. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's like, where to begin? Like one of the favorite things, so, we did a bunch of work with Flutter. There's always this trade-off, usually when you think about multi-platform solutions. React Native is one, and Cordova, there's been a whole history of them, right?
Yep.
And the big thing was just performance. So you want the benefit of a cross-platform solution, but you also want the performance and the fidelity of a cross-platform solution. Yep. So it turns out that actually we've had a solution that does this forever, and these are the game engines. So like, Unity and what's the other one?
Unreal Engine.
Unreal Engine, right? Yeah. So you can build and deploy the exact same pixels. And actually in some cases for those, you actually deploy to web too, WebAssembly. But how do they do that? They do their own engine. So they ship their engine down, and then you can get the exact same rendering fidelity across all the platforms. So Flutter took that trick. So we have our own engine, we call it Impeller, and we deploy it to all platforms. And even on the web, we compile it to WebAssembly.
Yep.
And then on top of that, instead of deploying to a scripting language, we actually compile Dart down to a native binary. So native ARM assembly code, for Android and iOS, even RISC-V, frankly. And on the web, we can compile to JavaScript and WASM. And so you get complete fidelity, because it's the exact same engine everywhere. So like you get the same experience on iOS and Android, and web, and desktop, and embedded. I think we talk about too at using Flutter for like their infotainment systems now.
Yeah, I think there's an infotainment one for cars over in Learn, right? Which
LG is
cool.
using Flutter for their TVs to do their UI. So we run everywhere. And so there's two interesting things, I think. One is Rody's point, which is one nice thing about JavaScript. I mean, there's lots of good things about JavaScript, but you can run it on in the browser and on the server. And so people really love doing this for Firebase. So I can write my web experience, I can share code, my node bits. And so you want to do that with Dart. So why is Dart interesting on the server? Well, it turns out the things that you want in a language for mobile apps, you want small binary, so it installs quickly, small install. You want really fast startup. You want really consistent frame rates. We do that with Dart. So you can make tiny ARM binaries. You can deploy to your Android, iOS, app stores, whatever else. So it turns out all those nice things are also exactly what you want for a functions framework, for serverless stuff. So you can compile, like on my Mac here, I can compile my server app, and the Dart SDK is like 200 megs, I think, zipped up. You have, dozens of dependencies. We can get down for like the demos, I can show later, to 10 megabyte binary. And on my Mac, actually, I can compile a Linux binary for AMD 64 and deploy that to Cloud Run. And so what does that mean? I can deploy a binary, in some cases, like 25 seconds from when I say deploy, I'll do the native compile and push up. I'm not waiting for Docker. I don't have to have Docker on my machine.
It also starts up immediately because it doesn't have to warm up.
Yeah, there's no warming up the JIT because it's an 8OT, binary. Yeah. And the fact that it starts up so fast. So we're talking about seconds to deploy, on the order of 20 or 30 seconds to deploy. Cold starts in milliseconds. And that means you can do scale to zero. You don't have to have, I think a lot of people keep instances around. I mean, some cases it might be interesting, but generally you can scale down to zero because literally the first start will be on the order of less than a second.
Yeah.
And so that's all nice just from a deployment perspective. And then from an engineering perspective, it's super useful because now your developers don't have to switch between Dart and JavaScript for the backend or Dart and Go. They can just stay in Dart. Yep. So all your business rules, your business logic, you can stay in Dart. And so that's the other big thing. So we've done work obviously with the Firebase team. The cloud team is called OS Only Deploys that lets you just binary zip up to deploy. And then we did a bunch of work to build all the libraries. So we have all the code so you can do Firestore and Google Storage and authentication and all those things. We've had them for years, frankly, for client apps, for the Flutter client apps. Now we have the mirror set on the admin SDK on the back end. So you can, call Google APIs, do storage, do auth, do Firestore all on the back end.
And in an authenticated way, so you don't have to open up reading to a bucket from the client side. You can just protect that all in a function and have one little API call.
You mean the app doesn't get owner rights?
Correct. Yeah, you don't. Yeah. It's always
lock it down.
It's always tempting, right? You want to get it working. You get your Flutter app running, and you're like, oh, well, I'll just put my service key in my bundle. Yeah. It's the last thing you want to do, right? Yeah. So
in retrospect, that might not have been a great idea.
Yeah, probably not.
In retrospect.
In retrospect. Yeah. And so Firebase does all this work. We have auth. Is it app verify? What's it called?
App check.
App check. So you get all that benefit on native and web to make sure that people calling your services are actually running your app. Mm-hmm. And then you keep your service keys. It's Google Cloud. So you have your metadata server and all the authentication service accounts, and that's all taken care of for you.
Yeah. One of the things I think is actually pretty compelling that you talk about, how many apps do we have which are actually bundles of languages?
Mm-hmm. Oh God, yeah.
So take, there's mobile, right? Where to your point, you're probably in minimally 2 languages. In cloud, you're arguably in between 2 and 5.
Yeah.
Because I still count shell as a programming language.
Totally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which we use for all of our deployment stuff, right? You have Terraform, you have your backend, you have your front end.
You potentially different languages for each.
Yeah. You have a data, you have database stuff somewhere. Mm-hmm. How can so I'm a developer, right? I'm new to Dart, but maybe I have some Dart and I have all these backend things. How would I approach kind of thinking about using this to maybe start compiling back down to a single language? Am I taking one piece, so I want to do a big bang?
So I think one of the ways to think about it is you want isomorphic kind of creation of your application. So when you have a back end and a front end, you want to try to move that layer to more of the front end being able to be called from the same language. Like you see this on Next.js, people want to write the API calls in JavaScript so they can like go from this front end. Well, that allows you to do that with Flutter and even just like Dart with HTML as well. So you can write basically your API server for your front end in Dart, and then you may still be talking to Go for like other microservices and parts of your application, but you can have that really nice type safety, and like anything that goes over the RPC is going to have the same classes, the same types of logic on both ends.
And one of the things that I do love about Dart is LLMs are pretty good at writing it.
Yeah. And what
turns out.
Yeah. And Kevin has a really cool point like in our talk tomorrow, but he's like, one of the nice things about Flutter is you think about what you want to build first, and then you pick the platform second. And I think that's just like a really nice way to think about it, because like you can go to a Raspberry Pi or a binary like API only server or on some embedded device or any type of platform. And that's always like a secondary decision after you start to craft your application.
Yeah, one of the things I love about it, was working with the GDE on some sample apps, and hey, do you want to deploy to phone? Well, like maybe eventually.
Yeah. At some point. Yeah.
At some point, yeah. But hey, we want to get something started and we want to test it. Well, hey, we have web already, so like let's use web, or let's compile natively like onto like an ARM binary. Yeah. But I don't have to like pick.
Exactly.
No. Yeah. I don't have to be like, hey, I know that it's going to be Android and these things. Like I gotta like pick the end state. Like I can work up to it.
Well, even like just from a pure Flutter productivity perspective, obviously, our friends at Apple and our friends on the Android team, they do good work on the emulator model, whatever else. Yeah. It's still a bit of a pain to like deal with starting up the emulator and like the user experience. And so we have a lot of Flutter folks. And obviously, I always say, make sure you test and validate on the devices you're going to go to. I'd never say skip that step. But just from a development perspective, you're just noodling, use a Flutter native desktop app on your Mac or whatever else, and use that for your debugging. And so, there's no going through the emulator, like it's just local, and you could iterate so fast. I mean, usually what I do is I'll use web for the exact same reason. So I can iterate super fast. Chrome is my, my development environment, and then later it's like, okay, I use the Chrome view to, make it look like a pixel thing, and then later it's like, okay, let's do native, and like it's an easy thing to jump to.
And we have hot reload now too, so it's a bit faster.
Yeah.
I do something very similar actually. So it's like, cool. Hey, like I've never talked to you before, but I do know how to actually use these things.
There's no shame. Yeah,
we have a demo.
Yeah. So this is
let's show this in action, because I think this let's see see the reality.
Cool. Yeah.
Right. So are we going to start with the local bits first?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about this launch of Dart with Firebase Functions is we're supporting full emulators. So you can test everything locally and get it working with just like starting it up. So you have access to Firestore and storage and auth and all the other things that you might be used to with the emulators. But now we're also adding that support for Dart Functions. So right here, we're just going to like run it locally first.
Well, I love the emulator thing, by the way, because if you think about doing LLM development, hey, I want to put all this in a sandbox.
Totally.
You have to have the emulator there. Otherwise, like now you're talking dial out, dealing with all these other things that like you can deal with it.
Yeah.
Like why if I just want to get features launched?
Yes. Totally. And you can do this like on an airplane or wherever you want.
Yeah. So quickly, I just want to show like the code structure, which is gets to the benefit, right? So the model is, of course, you have your app code, and this is your Flutter code, and you have your server.
So here, this is just the standard,
This is a
standard setup for an app.
This is like a standard mono repo setup for an app where you have like a shared folder, a server folder that you're going to deploy separately, and then the Flutter app itself.
And then, the punchline for us is like, this notion of shared. And so I should just show the code really quick, and then I can, so in terms of my terminal, so I've started running this. This is, Firebase emulator start like we're used to, and it's running locally. If you look through here, you can see that it's actually, doing the precompile on Dart bits.
And anybody using Firebase should be very familiar with this. Like, hopefully it's not too different.
Yeah, there's no surprises there. And the same thing on the Flutter side. So I'm doing somewhere here, Flutter run. Looks like there might be a little issue. This might be just dev stuff, because I know the app runs running. So
never demo the product live.
Never, I know. So this is probably the world's most boring Flutter app, because it's just a QR code and a bunch of numbers. But it is, Flutter and Firebase. So if you scan this code, and obviously folks at home, this is not going to do anything because it's a QR code to a local host. So they click on the image. This is what you're loaded.
Okay.
So this is Flutter and Firebase, and we'll show why Firebase in a second here. Let me actually bring it over. Is that good? That's good. There we go.
Yeah.
And so this is a different port. This is my server port. So this is actually my Dart binary running, and it's being proxied through the emulator in Firebase. So what can I do? I can, click on buttons. So this is all HTML on the right. It's actually a single HTML page. And this is just, calling back to my server and doing increments. And so what you see on the left is, this is my Flutter app connected with Firebase and the WebSocket magic of Firebase and Firestore. And I'm incrementing values and getting live updates, my Flutter app.
That's cool.
So let's look at the UI here a second, right? I have my little emojis here. They're kind of uniform. So this is a great example, right? Like, let's say we want to change the emojis that we want to show to our users. Again, this is like, okay, well, what's the emoji character that we're storing, and what's the key we want to use in the database? Like, these are all these things you want to keep track of. And, this is going to listen to things from Firebase and make sure it's showing the right UI. This is going to have to make sure it sends the right request headers, the right query strings with the right queries. Like, these are just all these, and multiply that times 100 in terms of deploying an app.
And also, like, the important thing here is, like, we want to show, like, sometimes you do want to make a really small change, but like move really quick, and this is like
that I change it everywhere, and that's the benefit here. So I have one file here, called constants. I'm really creative, right? And here's the emojis. And actually,
does it have constants
and Dart?
Yeah, totally.
Oh gosh, yes. Keep your day job. So I switched it here to Rocket. I forget. Actually, give me emoji. What's an emoji you want to do?
Oh, let's do the gold medal. Do you have that one?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if I've used that. I don't think I've ever used that one. Let's see what gold star.
No, gold medal. Come on.
Gold medal? Okay.
Yeah.
And this is anti-gravity. And see, he's going to do it for me. It doesn't want to do it for me.
It really wants to. All right.
Remove the star. See if it does it.
Okay. There you go. Gold medal. So I've already
cooking with gas.
It already started executing and rerunning the scan. Let me go here and do a hot reload on my app.
I love hot reload, by the way.
Isn't it nice? It's amazing. So look, already the app, there's our gold medal. So this is our Flutter app on the left. I'm reloading my server app. Drum roll. Oh no. You can tell what we're doing a demo, right? Live demo.
I think, do we have agents to debug agents?
We'll try here. Let me restart the emulator.
Yeah. Usually it's pretty fast. So yeah.
But, aside that's like what I think is cool. So you have emulators, you have this stuff like, we found a problem in basically 20 seconds, like after we put this in, under 20 seconds, like 5 seconds. And look, we can redeploy it and like
really fast iteration speed.
Like,
totally.
That's what makes some of these things so hard, right? Is that, okay, I got to wait for the binary to compile. I have to ship the binary to the device. I got to test on the device. I got to look like the feedback loop.
Yeah, so fast.
That's what kills developer productivity, and I love like seeing that here with Dart functions and the hot reload functionality.
Yeah,
you can make it easy. For developer to actually get into a flow state.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
And I think one of the other cool things now is like to show how not different the deploy step is.
Yeah. So this is local. I see localhost and localhost here, and we're now doing gold medals. That's great. We do have this app deployed live, and it's in our booths right now. And so I have sparkles. So if you sit here and wait, you might see someone at a booth go by and scan it. In fact, people watching the live stream right now, scan.
This version you can scan.
You can scan this one. Yeah, this is open. Let's see if anyone goes through. Maybe not. So I'm going to do probably the worst thing you can do, which is like, let's do a live deploy on air, so no net, and update the deployed app.
I'm game for anything that's live. Okay. Let's do it.
So, there you go. QR scans are coming in. Someone click the buttons now.
Nice.
Let's see
going. Yeah.
There we go. People are clicking. There it goes. Going nuts. Thank you, whoever's playing along at home.
Yeah.
Let's get your gold model live.
And it'll just scale with us.
Yeah. So we're going to do Firebase deploy. So this is one project, one Firebase.json file. We configured the app. We configured the app needs to be compiled to WASM for deployment. The server needs to be compiled to native Linux AMD 64. Let's see what happens. Watching console scroll by is the most exciting thing we do. So in there, our WebAssembly's compiler is running.
It's got colors, so at least that's okay.
It helps a little bit. Yep.
So what's, for folks watching along, what's happening here if you're new to the programming language?
Yeah, so
what are the steps here that we're doing to actually get this to a place where we can deploy it?
So one of the cool things about Firebase is it has like Firebase JSON that configures all the services that you have, where there's storage, auth, and the database and functions. So with one like deploy command, it's taking everything and compiling it, updating rules and everything in the console, which by proxy is also updating GCP.
So we have, your Dart code is being compiled to WebAssembly, HTML, JavaScript are being bundled up and that's all being sent to Firebase hosting.
Yep.
And then your server binary, using those same shared constants, combined to that Linux AMD 64 binary, and being uploaded and doing deployments. So you see right here, we're now updating the increment. So that's and the QR code scan logic. So this is now being updated and uploaded to Google Cloud Run. This might be the slow part. Tension.
But it's crazy because it's already done so much so far, and then there we go.
Oh, wait. There was an error. You know
That's
what?
all good.
But this already went through. So you're going to time out. If we see if it deployed, let's try. It might have gotten through. There was been a little bit thing with our network here. Let me disable the cache and see what happens. Oh, it didn't go through.
You know what? It's live. Here's what I love. We're doing it live. We're doing it live. Yeah. We wanted to show that we weren't like faking it. So.
Well, yeah. These things happen, right?
Yeah,
They happen in demos here. They happen on big stages. The thing is, like, let's roll with it. And honestly, like I bet you it's probably like a config change that we just have to make.
And honestly, this is a perfect point. So if you look at the docs and everything else, it's an experiment. So this is, we're very early. We want your feedback. So it's actually good to set expectations here, because obviously the Firebase backend support, like, I don't know how many triggers. There's a few dozen triggers, right? For auth and everything else. So for this release, we don't have any triggers set up. So I know people love, you can hook auth events and Firestore events and run code. We don't have those yet. We just have the normal HTTP functions. That's all we have for this release. And so, but we still have all the backend APIs. So if you, on your backend, you want to talk to Firestore, cloud storage, check the auth tokens, that all works. But if you want to trigger an auth event, we're not quite there yet. But we do think we have enough there to build interesting scenarios and to let people try things out.
That's super cool.
And actually, I think it succeeded.
All right.
I did another one while we talked. Let's see, with my caching disabled.
There it goes. Hey.
And then let's click on this guy. So this is deployed, hosted app. And now we have your metal. So
that is so awesome. All right. I'm
So
glad that we got it working.
I'm so glad.
You know what? That was, that was like under 4 minutes, like with a failed deploy. That's pretty rad.
Yeah.
All right. Kevin, Rody, thank you so much. For everyone listening in, please go try Dart functions out. Give Kevin feedback.
Please.
Kevin really would like to have feedback. I think this is a super cool piece of functionality that we're releasing, and go use that in Firebase.
So dart.dev, flutter.dev, it'll be on our blog post.
Yeah.
We'll have blog post releases out.
And we have a talk tomorrow.
We have a talk tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for coming on here. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back here in a few minutes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What is up, Google Cloud friends and family? I am joined here this afternoon by one of my favorite people I work with at Google Cloud, Ines Envid, a senior director in product management for some of the cool things that we just launched yesterday with Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. Ines, it is great to have you on. And we've done demos together for 4 next?
Yes. I think it's 3, but we're going to do the next one, so we'll do 4.
Okay, perfect. Can't wait. Ines, you and I were talking before this about Agent Platform. How many years, if you think of all the work that's gone into this, is it a lot of work, or did we build the foundation before we actually had to do much work?
Yeah, so at Google, we've taken the approach of building horizontally a lot of the capabilities in the platform. So we have big investments that are recurring, like are ongoing all the time, and that includes in the networking to really distribute all the paths to be standardized, to have like standardized hooks where you have controls, then you have API, management at scale.
Yeah.
So we've been building a lot of the capabilities over the years. So then I think when it comes to the agentic evolution, it's more about the extensibility of those. And I think that's what's really given us a great place to start.
One of the things I think is so interesting, so one of the announcements we had was actually for Agent Gateway. And I remember when you were first telling me about Agent Gateway, you're like, well, it's like a gateway, but it's also not a gateway. How should someone think about how we approach agentic identity and then that the access model on agents?
Yeah, looks like an agent, works like an agent.
Not an agent.
Not an agent. No, let's talk about the gateway. So I think everybody knows network. I'm a networking person at heart, so Like
I'm a finance major at heart.
I think those two can go together. We can do some good business here. Let's talk about that right after. But Google has extremely powerful network, and I think probably the biggest network in the planet. And we've been, over the years, been building something that we call One Network. And what One Network is independent of the compute or storage or infrastructure stack that you're connecting, whether it's a serverless or an infrastructure or is a Kubernetes pass. They're all communications get standardized with the same interfaces. And then what that does is that we are in a good place to really distribute the orchestration of controls for things like policies and so on. So when it comes to the gateway, it's really more like a management construct that then really orchestrates the agentic protocols that are running in the network. But we don't really need to spin up a different stack to do that. We're just having the orchestration across all those control points. We build extensibility now for MCP, for agent to agent, but the hard work is done. So that's what I was meaning. It's new management capability. But all the plumbing is just reusing what we've built over the years.
Yeah, one of the things I love for developers working with this stuff, right, is that gateways, right? I can create one, I have the logical gateway that I create, and then agent traffic is actually pretty easy to manage, right? Because we already had the underpinnings with identity aware proxy. I can set conditional things with my agent behavior, with my MCP behavior. It is nice, and you just manage it like a policy.
Right. So if you think about the evolution of the stack, then it's really, the model context protocol, the agent to agent, then it's, in some ways behaves the same. It can run HTTP or it can run gRPC, but then I think how you control the application layer, it's very different. It's natural language. That's my role. It's stuff talking. It's unstructured. So I think that's where some of the fun parts come with AI protection and whatnot. Like you're really protecting language, like human language, and you need to understand if you have a number, is that a credit card number that you're trying to exfiltrate? Or is that...
It was my credit card number.
It was your credit card number, so
no one cares.
then we're good. But, or is that, like meaningless, identifier for something that isn't stacked. So it's very, it's a very interesting topic of how do we protect in that new world, those communications.
So another thing you mentioned with that, which I think is also, I know we've been building up on these for the past few months, but tell me a little bit more about Google Cloud MCP, because obviously there's ways that we're approaching MCP that customers can also leverage as well. So what makes Google Cloud MCP, how we're using that with Google APIs, unique for folks who are like, I've heard of MCP, but I've also heard that MCP can be not authorized or unsecure. Like, how do they use these things in a way where they feel confident that they're going to have like a production-ready thing?
Right. So let's imagine, you work in my company, and you are very adventurous, developer.
I set owner to all my projects, so I am. Yeah.
So you're gonna go and set up stuff in your laptop, and I love you, Jason, but I'm not gonna trust you. Like I don't know.
I wouldn't trust me.
No, I don't know what you're running there for. What but it's really hard to really build any of the controls on the local environments. It's just so. What we've done in cloud is really we're using all the API management infrastructure, and under the hoods, you have API management, and then you have really a networking capabilities. In the world, like most of the things go down to the network.
That's
anyway,
all the network,
that is, you have API management is like a layer 8 in the networking stack. Did you study the OSI stack? Like you have L7 is application.
I'm like layer 9, which is the user. Is the user layer 9? Is the user layer 10? I'm not a networking engineer.
Anyway, so what it does is like at that layer, then you have the application, which has the meaning of what someone is trying to do. So we've used that API management capability to now do NCP remote management capability. But you can imagine the sophistication. We're running, it's not even Google Cloud API management, it's Google API management. You use any APIs of Google. Cool. That's the platform that we're running on. And this one NCP, by the way, the NCP servers that we do remote, it has Google Cloud capabilities, but we're exposing a lot of capabilities for Android, for maps, and so on. So the beauty of that is that the same controls we've built over the years for the management, the authentication, authorization, you have quota management for, that then converts into requests, API requests, or MCP request management. They're all kind of integrated into the platform. You don't need to stand up a container or a serverless to run your own remote NCP server and then have all the controls there. So you just, go, use it, good to go.
One of the things I actually love about it is people think that writing tools is this like easy thing that you do, right? You look, I look at this API, like I just, give an AI the thing, it writes a spec for it, like I'm good to go. You're like, not really. Like how do I use a database? How do I use something like Cloud Run? Like even like the atomic units, like, hey, how am I mutating a service? Like there are nuances in the platform and like when a tool should be called that what's great is that Google experts who are Google software engineers are actually writing like these specs also that customers get to benefit from, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so there's two parts on this. The model context protocol is the server, which is kind of all the infrastructure. We talk that under the hood it has network. I'm not going to let go. So,
it's all network. That's my takeaway from this. It's all about the network.
The network. But it's like, it's a server, client server. Okay. And then on top of that, then you publish tools. But then to your point, you need to understand how to build those tools. Those tools is like go query my data or go right to this data set or whatnot. So it's tricky sometimes to build those in the best way that work with the agents, and this is where Google Cloud and a lot of the work so that the tools are at the right level of granularity and with the right kind of instructions. You also need to write instructions. The tool does this, so then you announce it to the world.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of art that goes into that. You need to test it. You need to try different things. All that comes off the shelf by using our MCP servers.
That's super cool. So let's move up the stack on kind of the agent work.
Even more, okay.
Yeah,
Getting farther
we're going
from
to like
the network
layer 11.
Uh-huh.
There's no layer 13 though. That's bad luck.
We can create it here.
Or it's my layer. I don't know. So Mofi this morning, as part of the Developer Keynote, talked about how we think about building agents. So we obviously have, from the agent code perspective, we have MCP, connecting to remote MCP servers, which is awesome because as a developer, I just give it, a registry link, and then it can import all these things for it. How would I think then about skills?
Yeah, I think skills are going to become super important, and for the most part are how-to guides.
Yeah.
It's like you're telling your agent in plain English or Spanish maybe at some point. This is, these are the things you should do, and to do those, do first X, second Y, third. And then for this, go and call that tool. If you, for that step, go and, whatever. But this is a markdown file. And so I think one of the biggest challenges in the new architectures is how do you make sure that all those are not tampered with?
Yeah.
Because anyone can go and, mess with your file, just give different instructions.
I only build locally, so I wouldn't know.
You build locally. You give fun instructions to this agent, and agents are very accomplished. They really like to achieve their goal. So if you give them a goal, they're gonna do anything it takes to go and make it happen, and they're gonna find all type of loopholes to go and achieve your task because they're very proud. And I think they're gifted teenagers. That's the way I think about them. It's they're too smart for their own good. So what happens is you really need to treat these, as artifacts, doing vulnerability scanning, having versioning, understanding if anyone has changed, what has changed, versioning, management, and all that. So this is a lot of the work that we're going to do moving forward, is really do the catalog of the skills that they can be used, but also treat them as real software artifacts. You had binaries before, now you have skills.
Yeah.
As dangerous or more.
What I love about it, if you think of, and we'll talk about agent registry here in a second, we have the foundations, right? So we have the network, where we've been working on MCP servers, remote enablement security around that, moving so it's easy for developers to use skills, whether it's probably ours or custom created ones, because those do exist, right? There's specialized knowledge that only I have that I maybe want to share out, give with an agent in a controlled way. Let's talk then the last piece. So, how do we sharing agents? You and I did a demo. We did zero coding of any agents because apparently that's what you and I do.
Mm-hmm. I love no code agents.
No code agents. How does agent registry? So, business users, right? They have many use cases where building a no-code agent actually, as you and I were even doing, right, you can get relatively close, with just a few prompts. How does agent registry make it easy for developers and business users to actually collaborate together, with agents?
Yeah, more and more, I really think that all this agent ecosystem is going to become more specialized agents, or even really like very light and that do few things well, and then they kind of talk with each other to accomplish more complex tasks. So on the agent registry, you have two things. You first make sure that they're discoverable. You have as well metadata about what they can do, what they're good for, and you also have controls associated to that. So then I can actually set up, like, I might give you access to my less dangerous agent, and then the ones that are dangerous I'm going to keep away from you. I'm just going to set policies around. So it serves that double purpose, but I think it's the bread and butter of any governance to know what's going on.
Yeah, what I love, times there's users where it's like, hey, I have this idea. Like, hey, like you have your idea, you can build a no code or even a high code agent and just use it on your own. But with registry, you can bring that together also, and you can say, hey, like, well, your agent, my agent. Well, what if we made a team of agents?
Right.
That started to help accomplish tasks together. And what's cool about that, at least from my perspective, in using some of the front end work in Gemini Enterprise in particular, is well, let's try it. I can give two agents as contacts, and let's see where this goes, and obviously in a way that's security and privacy safe. But I think it unlocks a lot more experimentation.
Right.
Because so many agentic things, as you and I both know, you kind of have to just try it out.
Right.
And until you do that, you're well, it's an interesting idea. Will it work or will it not?
Yeah.
But before that was like a 6-month activity.
I know. It's make it so much easier. And because I do no code agents, but you're a real developer, so you're going to do the high code agents.
I think it's flipped.
Then I'm gonna just explore what my no code agent can do with your agents, but just open so many possibilities as to the what we can achieve in terms of the end-to-end task. So very easy to collaborate, and then they start sharing the context and it's fascinating because I really believe that at some point, we will have these teams of agents and humans that will become a team. Sometimes it's actually to share the context as part of, you have a space in which all of them are collaborating, share the same context. That really need sharing everything I need to do with you. So it's a much more efficient way to have agents helping us to bridge towards the gaps of human communication as well. It's really going to open up a lot of different possibilities for collaboration.
I think that's super cool. All right, let's talk about, I'm going to totally change topics on you. You have obviously, within your team, a very broad product portfolio. What's one thing that you or your team is working on that you think is super cool, but maybe some of our viewers are maybe less familiar with? And it can't be the network. No, it can't be the network.
Yeah, I left the network some few years ago, but I keep a close eye. My team, because we are doing a lot of the plumbing, is a lot of the things we do there not very well known, but for example, all these capabilities that have been leveraged for the agent platform is something again that we've been working over the years. I think right now, I don't know if it's not well known, but some of the areas around the cloud as is really transforming the management of cloud, which we do not only work on the platform that builds the agents, but we also create agents that are very specialized in cloud management. So if you want to create Terraform or you want to investigate or troubleshoot an issue that is ongoing in cloud, or you want to understand the cost, or you want to understand, which vulnerabilities might be in your workloads, you have like a set of agents that help you. You just speak English and help you to do all that. So that is super cool. And more, they'll start being more autonomous. So the question is, where are the things that as humans we're going to be more comfortable giving these agents autonomy to do? We've just launched the proactive agents, which what they do is like, before you ask them what's wrong, they're gonna take a look at what's wrong, and then they're gonna find some diagnosis and remediation for that. But you can imagine, like, you can apply that to everything, cost anomalies, and then if a role goes wrong, and then they're going to keep an eye on you, and then once they know what's going on, they're gonna want to fix it as well. So how much autonomy we give them? Or
That's super cool. All right, Ines, thank you so much for joining me on this, in addition to the live stream, the big stage earlier.
Yay.
We did great.
Go
Thank you,
Jason.
everyone, for
Thank you.
listening in, and hope this was super informative, and we'll catch you here in a little bit.